Good morning, everyone. All right, so this session is called Improve Language and Literacy Skills Through Shared Reading. So I'm hoping that today, regardless of where you work and what group of students you work with, we give you some information that is valuable and meaningful and that you can use. Literacy is one of my favorite topics. So a little bit about me before we get started is I am an occupational therapist by training. I'm the new assistive technology specialist in Edmonds, and I'm just thrilled to be here. I am just loving working in Edmonds and just how everyone has such, high expectations for the kids and is, receptive to learning and trying something as we've all this year tried lots of things that are new and a little bit crazy. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and move to our housekeeping slide. Sorry, I muted myself. So I'm going to ask you to mute your microphone unless you're speaking. Please feel free to jump out and ask, speak out and ask questions if you have them, or type them in the chat. We'll have some time at the end to answer questions. And then here's the link to the Google Slides, and I'm going to wait a minute or so before I paste. Actually, I can paste it now. I think most of you are here. I'm going to paste it in the chat. And so then if you just can click on that. The other thing is make sure that whatever name you use at school, as far as human resources, is the name that is in your Zoom window. So the way you change that is if you hover over your picture, there are 3 little dots. If you click on that, you can rename yourself. Anybody who's coming in, I will post the chat doesn't show up for people who until you, so I'm going to post the handout in there again, and let's get started. So we're going to start with the land acknowledgement like we do every meeting in Edmonds. So we acknowledge the original inhabitants of this place, the Snohomish people and their successors, the Tulalip tribes, who since time immemorial have taken care of, hunted, fished, and gathered on these lands. We respect their sovereignty, their right to self-determination, and we honor their sacred spiritual connection with the land and water. By acknowledging these homelands, we commit to working with tribal nations to further the education aims that they have identified in our classroom and schools. Okay, so I love literacy. I'm a literacy junkie. And, as you work with me over the years, you'll find that, that is kind of at the heart of, everything I do. As an OT, I believe that reading and writing are essential occupations, and all of our kids need to be able to graduate being able to do both of those skills in their own way. It may not look the same for everybody. Information in this class is kind of targeted a little more towards some of our complex needs, but there are certainly strategies that you can use here for shared reading with any child. So let's go through the learning outcomes. So I want you to be able to define shared reading when we're done. I want you to describe what the CAR method is, and we're going to talk about that to support student interaction. And describe the characteristics of a book that make it a good choice for shared reading. So that's kind of what we're hoping. All right, so who is here today? So again, I told you a little bit about me starting off. I'll give you a little bit more information. I live in Kingston. My husband and I have 2 children and 2 dogs, which are kind of like children. And our son is a legislative director for one of the members of the House in Washington, D.C., and our daughter is attending Rider University in New Jersey from her bedroom next door. So that's a little bit about me. So tell me a little bit about you. You can either turn on your annotate tool and put a little mark or type in here or put it in the chat. But I'd like to know a little bit about where you work, just so I have a sense of who is here today. And if it's easier to do the chat, just do the chat. Got developmental preschool, high school life skills, Madrona. All right, so we've got a variety of settings. There's one that I didn't know. What is a CPE in SPED? Learning all the Edmonds acronyms. Oh, nice, Kathy. All right, so hopefully you'll all leave with a little something today to kind of help you out. Oops, let me clear the annotations here. Okay, so this is hyperlinked to where all the link for the handouts I have put in the chat, and I will put it in the chat again at the end of the class. Oh, Jackie became a grandma for the first time this morning. Oh my goodness, Jackie, yay for you being here. Anyway, the handouts, if you click on this hyperlink here, when you do the handouts, it'll take you to a folder in a Google Drive. And so it has the PowerPoint, some of the activity pages I'll be talking about, the shared reading self-reflection form, and weekly literacy academic routines planning form. So those will all be there for you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about shared reading. We all have done this probably with our own children. It's a type of reading that focuses on the interaction that happens between an adult and a student or a group of students while reading together. So it's that interaction that we're talking about. The goal of shared reading is to maximize the student's interaction with the adult and other students. That the adult helps with making connections between the books and things that the student has already experienced. Sound like some things you're already doing? The adult helps the students make these connections through comments, not questions. In fact, questions are avoided as much as possible. So usually the adults let the students lead the interaction in shared reading. However, they encourage the students to take the lead in communicating about their feelings and things that they find interesting. So I'm sorry, adults usually lead the interaction, but the students are kind of encouraged to be there and be part of it the whole time. And the biggest thing that I know I constantly have to remind myself to do is to pause and wait. So when you're commenting and you're saying, gosh, I wonder what's going to happen next, or, you know, oh, that is different than mine. You need to pause and wait. And really you want to watch for any type of communication, a movement, an eye blink, an eye turn, you know, anything like that, so that they are responding and trying to add a little bit more so that they have the opportunity. And that wait time can be, I usually say a good rule of thumb is to like count in your head to 10 and wait that 10 seconds. And some kids it's longer. I've had students as long as like 50 seconds. And if you're coaching them while they're pulling together their motor response, like, come on, you can do it, or give me a yes, or, what do you think? They have to start that motor planning all over. For our students who have like these bodies that are complex bodies that don't really do what they want to do when they want it to do, putting that motor plan together to actually give you a response takes a lot of cognitive energy. So they can use personal communication systems if they have them. We have some students who have their own speech generating devices in the district. A lot of our kids who struggle with communication have their own AAC system, including, and typically most of the students in the district, if the district has provided it, we're using Proloquo to Go. There are a few others out there. But you can use their system to demonstrate as well, when you're talking. So use all your tools you've got here. And in the end, remember the goal of shared reading is to maximize communication and interaction. We're not asking questions, we're not checking comprehension. We're not doing any of those things. So we're just doing that interaction with reading. Think about bedtime stories with your own children, if you have children, and how you would, point to the picture and like, wow, I like that. Or, oh, that dog is the same color as our dog. And, you're making those connections. It's the same with, all of our students. And if you think about, shared reading, not only are we looking at our students with complex bodies or complex communication needs, or students on the spectrum that is really hard. If you look at the socioeconomics of some of our students, many of them, the families have not been able to do shared reading. They're just, working hard to get a meal on the table. And so, they come to school without those literacy experiences. And so we might be the first one, really doing some shared reading with them. So even, I'll never forget, I had a little boy in my OT room early on when I started working in the schools. And I had these coloring pages that were nursery rhymes, and it was Jack and Jill. And, I read it to him and he was like, Mrs. Brislin, could you read that again? And I'm like, have you never heard this? And he's like, no. And, those were things I just did in the grocery store with my kids. So a lot of kids are coming without these literacy touches that some of our other students come in with. Okay, so we are going to watch a video from Project Core. This whole shared reading curriculum was created through Project Core, which is part of the center, which was developed under a grant from the Center for Disability and Literacy Studies at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And they've just really put together a great module. So we're going to use bits and pieces of that as we're going through today. So we're going to let them tell us all about what shared reading is. Hold on, let me turn my sound on. I forget I have to do that every time we get into a Zoom.
This module, Teaching Communication During Academics, Shared Reading, discusses how to support interaction and teach communication during a common academic routine called shared reading. Project Core is being conducted by the Center for Literacy and Disability Studies, a unit in the Allied Health Sciences Department at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Shared reading is a type of reading that focuses on the interaction that happens between an adult and a student or a group of students while reading together. The goal of shared reading is to maximize student interaction with the adult and other students. During shared reading, The adult helps students make connections between the book and things the student already knows or has experienced. The adult helps students make these connections through comments, not questions. In fact, questions are avoided as much as possible. Adults do the reading, and usually adults lead the interaction when shared reading is new. However, adults encourage students to take the lead and communicate about the things they find interesting. Adults help students learn to take the lead by showing them how to make comments about the book, by taking long pauses and waiting for the student to communicate, and by carefully watching for any type of communication. When they see the student communicate in any way, they respond by repeating and adding a little more. Throughout shared reading, students must have access to their own communication system. Students may interact in other ways, but they should always have access to their universal core vocabulary. Adults can use the student's personal communication system to demonstrate commenting and to provide aided language input. In the end, remember that the goal of shared reading is to maximize communication and interaction. We aren't asking questions or checking comprehension. Let's consider an example shared reading lesson. An adult was reading a book called Noses with a small group. The adult read the title, Noses, and then used a student's personal communication system to say, "Look." The teacher then paused and waited for 10 full seconds. He watched the students closely, looking for any form of communication. He saw nothing, so he showed the students the picture and demonstrated and said, "Look," again. Then he added, "Look, a nose," before he again paused and waited for 10 full seconds. After 5 seconds, one of the students put her hand on her universal core system. The adult saw her movement and said, "I see your hand. Tell me." Again, he paused and waited. A few seconds later, the student looked at him and then the book. The adult said, "You are looking at the book. I think you want me to read it." Then he points to more on the girl's universal core system and says, "I will read more." On the next page, the adult read the text, "Dog nose," and then said, "Different nose," pointing to the symbol for different on the student's universal core system. Then the adult paused and waited for students to communicate. 10 seconds later, the adult flipped to the previous page and pointed to the picture of the tiger's nose, and then back to the current page and pointed to the dog nose. He then repeated his comment, "Different nose," while pointing to the symbol for different. One student who uses speech yelled out, "I have a dog." The adult responded by saying, "You do," pointing to the symbols you and do. Another student who is learning to use a universal core system to communicate got very excited when his classmate announced that he had a dog. The adult saw his excitement and said, "I see you. You look like you have something to say. Tell me." Then the adult pointed toward the student's universal core system, paused, and waited. The boy looked down and touched it. Unsure what the student meant, the adult repeated the boy's message by saying and pointing to it on the boy's universal core system. Then the adult added, "It is a dog nose," as he first pointed to it on the universal core system and then pointed to the nose in the book. Then the adult paused and waited to give other students a chance to communicate. After 5 seconds, The adult turned the page and continued. On this page, the adult enthusiastically read, "Hose nose," and then said, "Like a hose," and pointed to the symbol for like and repeated the word like. And then he paused and waited. When one student laughed, he said, "Yes, I hear you laughing. It is funny." And then he added, "It can blow water," while pointing to the symbols for it and can. Then he paused, waited, and watched the students. A student made a sound after a few seconds. The adult said, "I hear you." Then he asked the student to tell me as he pointed toward the student's universal core system. The student looked at the core system, then the adult, and then the book. The adult described what he saw. "I see you looking. Are you thinking?" "I am thinking, how?" As he points to how on the boy's core system and then says, "How can it?" As he points to how, can, and it on the core board. All of these example comments and invitations were open-ended to encourage students to communicate and interact. The adult carefully observed the students, attributed meaning to their behaviors, and encouraged them to use their universal core systems to communicate. All of this without asking direct questions or requiring the use of symbols. Like the example we reviewed, adults should focus on the use of universal core words and show students how they could use their communication system to interact during shared reading. Adults should keep comments simple and highlight 1 or 2 words on the students' core systems. The book supports this by providing a shared context that adds meaning to the comments. After reading each page and commenting, remember to pause and wait for at least 10 seconds. Many students need adults to be silent for 15, 20, or even 30 seconds before they can process and plan a way to communicate. As you get started, count in your head to remind yourself to slow down and be patient. Offer your students the silent time they need to organize their thoughts and bodies to respond. An easy way to remember how to maximize interactions during shared reading is to follow the CAR. C stands for comment, A stands for ask for participation, and R stands for respond. Let's review each one. After reading the text on the page, the adult should comment. Make a simple, open-ended comment and then wait for 10 or more seconds to give your students time to communicate in some way. Ask for participation. Make it clear with your comments and gestures that you want students to communicate with you. Ask students to participate by making requests like "tell me," gesturing toward their communication systems, or by repeating your original comment. And then wait with interest. Respond. When a student communicates in some way, respond to them. Repeat what they did or said, add a little more, and then offer them enough.
Oops. Okay. So I think it ended with offer them enough wait time. I might have cut the slide off when I inserted it from YouTube too soon. Okay, so we learned a little bit about kind of what is shared reading, what makes it a good experience. So we're going to do an activity here together, and instead of worrying about the handout, I have put the slides in there, and we can actually do it through the chat. Again, shared reading is the interaction that occurs when an adult and child look at or read a book together. So for this activity, we're going to review some samples of shared reading, and then we'll analyze some of the statements on the handout and see if they support a good shared reading experience. And let's see. What I did is I went ahead and I left the slides here that were in the video so that in your PowerPoint you have them kind of handy. So again, just so you know, if you want to look back and don't want to watch the whole video, you can be like, oh yeah, that's what that meant. So I'm going to buzz through these quickly. Okay, so let's look at these, and if you want to, again, use your annotation, you are welcome to do that. If you want to, I would say let's pick a stamp. If everybody can go to their annotation tool and pick a stamp and stamp in your response to the answers, and then we'll talk about them. So if you'll read these, and then let's see, I'll show you. I'm going to go to my annotation. I've got a stamp. It's February. I'm going to do a heart. And I'll put it there. So if everybody can go and put kind of what they think is the right answer, then we'll talk about it. Oh, what is the annotation tool? It should be in your toolbar across the bottom, and it should say annotation. Oh, it's not available on the Chromebook. Okay. If you click on the three little buttons that say more, do you find it? Do you see it? Okay.
We pretty much just have participants, chat, and share at the bottom.
Okay.
That's what I think. I don't know if everybody has that, but.
Looks like I've got a few people that it's okay, that's fine. And I am not necessarily a Chromebook. I am not a great Chromebook user yet. I'm still working on that. Every week I get a little better. Okay, so let's go ahead and read through them on the list, and people can jump out and say kind of what they think. How's that sound? You can just take, jump in and speak up. So based on the video we watched and what we've kind of learned about shared reading so far, I want you to let me know if these statements are, support a good shared reading experience. So a good shared reading experience, you maximize the interactions with students on a page-by-page basis.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the answer? Yes? You can speak out loud and proud. Okay, so overwhelmingly, my people who have been able to annotate have said yes. So yeah, you want it to be, so every page, so it's not like you're reading the whole book and then talking about it. So it definitely slows that reading down to increase that interaction for everybody, or for the student, sorry. Then you want, is a good shared reading experience where you ask direct questions about details in the book. So we've got no. So you're just sharing that reading experience. We're not quizzing. Use the book as a content to support students in interacting with others about parts of the book the student finds interesting. What do you think about that? Yeah, so that's a good way to kind of encourage some interaction if you're reading with a group of students. That's a great way to kind of interact with each other about I have a dog, has a nose. Does your dog have a nose? Okay. Adults should make comments, connect the book to the students' lives, carefully observe the student to determine what attracts their attention or piques their interest in the book. Getting lots of yeses there. Okay. The letters in the acronym CAR stand for coax, ask, and require? Does anybody remember what they were? Comment.
Ask, respond.
Yep, comment, ask, respond. Perfect. Okay, if the student indicates an interest or communicates about something in the book, the teacher should not respond, but stick to the lesson plan. Got lots of no's there, perfect. Adults should demonstrate the use of universal core to make comments. Okay, getting lots of yeses there. And now some of you who work with students who don't use a core board, sometimes with some of my really, my emergent readers or struggling readers, I might pull a core board out and just help give them another way to help learn that word. And most core words are the words we use 80% of the time when we speak. So they're super easy to model because they happen in everything. And then the other words, like the content specific words, are called fringe. So say we're studying volcanoes. Volcanoes would be, all the volcano vocabulary would be fringe. So it just so happens that a lot of the core words are sight words, or they're the first, the Dolch words that the kids are learning. And so if you have your core board out, some of those kids, who maybe haven't been diagnosed with dyslexia, or just really not progressing with reading like everybody else, you can give them, oh, here's a visual to go with that word. And it just kind of helps sync that in with multiple senses. So it works for those kids as well. Adults should provide enough wait time that students have a chance to make their own comments or communicate with us in some way. Getting lots of yeses there. Looks like some more people figured out the annotation tool. Yay. Adults should encourage communication by attributing meaning to each communication effort observed. Yeah, and that might be something, very subtle. So you really need to kind of be paying attention there. Okay, now my favorite topic here is use hand over hand to help students point to symbols that answer a question. Okay, I'm going to get on my, I'm getting some yeses. So I'm going to get on my soapbox here because there's no really wrong answer, but I'm going to talk a little bit about hand over hand. So when you are doing hand over hand with a student, there is no motor activity happening. None. You are moving them. So there's not like a motor pathway firing. They're not learning how to get to that symbol. They are not. So there's no motor learning happening at all when you use hand over hand to help a student point to the symbols. And really what you're teaching these students is it is okay for adults to touch you and move you without your permission. And that's really something we don't want them to think is okay. Just for, it sets them up for a lifetime of, potential abuse. So, you can say, oh, do you want me, can I help you point to it? And you can ask permission, or you just model it. You just point to it and you don't put their hands on there and, and touch them. Does that make sense? And I know for me, this was a real change of practice for me because, I would do hand over hand for writing. And when I learned that when you look at the neurodevelopment, it is not helping them learn that skill any faster because they can just turn off and I'm going to, let you point. And then they become these kids who, want you to point and they'll guide your hand there. And so we really, want to avoid hand over hand in all activities really as much as possible. All right. Good job, everybody. Okay. Oops, let me go to my annotation tool. here we go, and delete our annotations. Okay, next section of the module here is, let's see if we started at the right spot. Yes.
We have found that share reading is more successful when adults plan their comments before reading the book. Planning the comments before each reading helps adults maximize their use of core vocabulary. That maximizes opportunities for students who are learning to use core to communicate. There's an instructional planning guide on the Project Core website. You'll find that the guide is set up to support repeated reading of each book. Instead of planning a single set of comments for a single reading, plan a set of comments for 3 or more readings and use the book 3 or more times during shared reading. Over time, this repeated reading is likely to increase interest and participation. As we've discussed, keep your comments short. Use the core words your students could use to make similar comments. The boxes on the shared reading planning sheet are intentionally small to remind you to focus on single words or 2-word combinations your students could use. After you've planned your core comments, consider adding sticky notes to each page of the book. As you turn to the page, remove the sticky note reminder. It only takes a few minutes to add these reminders and set yourself up for success. Pause for
Okay. Okay, so this is always good for me, is to remember to plan ahead. So in this activity, we're going to do a few pages here of a book, and I want you to write down some core phrases that you might use when reading to your students, and then we're going to share them with the group. So we'll do kind of a page at a time, and you can share them in the chat. It's okay. The document, Sunny, I'm going to share the, here's the document. Okay, so we're gonna do it together. I've got them in the slide. I kind of figured I'd make it as easy as possible for all of us. So here is our book. It's called R is Really Important by Jane Farrell, and it is in Tar Heel Reader, and I will show you that later as a place to find books. And this is a copy of the core board that we use in Edmonds. So you might see some with flip pages with fringe, but this is, pretty much like the whole board. So if you have a core board on your lanyard, this is what it's going to look like. So if you want to put in the chat, what are some core words you might say here about this page? And it can just be like one word. Anybody got any ideas? I'll get us started. So look, someone has look, it could be like, I don't like pirates. So you'd have your little sticky note. Let's see, smile, or like or happy is feeling. Wonder how they're feeling. Book, good, it, more. So we would model that with enthusiasm. So I would be like, oh, R is really important. You could be like, I want more pirates. Let's see what's going to happen next. All right, here comes our next page. maybe. Okay, R is very important to pirates. What do you think? What are some words there? Who, like, more, good. Could do something like not wait, like I cannot wait to see why it's important. You know, or wonder why. I don't think our core board has when. Great, great. Okay, let's see this next page here. Every pirate needs a chart. Good, why, who, good, I the same. Yeah, you could talk about I need a map. Where, what, want. Yeah, it could be need it, need who. All right, great ideas, everybody. Okay. So the next one is, but without the R, it's just chat. What might you say on that page? Could do happy, it makes, it makes me happy because I think that's funny. Oh, you could do like, there's not an R. The word is different. The word is break. The word is broken. Maybe they're sad. Could they be sad without their R? Maybe if they had a chat instead of a chart, they might be mad. Or you could do like, I love it because it's funny. I love it. Okay, here's the next one. R is really important to pirates. So it could be some of the words we used, on that last page, but it could be like, I see now why it's important. So you could have, I see. Now I understand. I see that it's important. Or want. Pirates want an R. Okay, the left side of our ship is called a port. What might you model for that one? What? Yeah, one of my favorites is look. I model look as much as possible. Look. Look, it's a boat. Like. Big. All right, awesome. Outside, yep. Okay, so here is our, but without the R, it's just a pot. So again, some of these same words, look, like, it looks like a big pot. It's different. Don't like, where did the R go? So those are all some different things you could use for that. Perfect. Okay, one more quick little video about choosing books to use for shared reading, how to choose a good book.
There are a few important things to keep in mind when selecting books for shared reading. To begin, look for short books that can be read and possibly reread in a single activity. Choose books that offer appropriate language complexity to support students making meaningful connections with the text and illustrations. For example, this adapted book about Tom Sawyer from the Tar Heel Reader Library provides access to the interesting story about Tom at an appropriate language level for beginning communicators who are in middle and high school grades. Choose books that your students find interesting. There will be much more to communicate and interact if you select a book on topics that interest them. Consider sources like Tar Heel Reader for accessible books on a wide range of topics. There are tens of thousands of easy-to-read books on a wide range of topics. Finally, one of the most important things to remember for successful shared reading experiences is to read and interact with enthusiasm. Students are going to be much more likely to engage and interact when adults are enthusiastic readers and excited about interacting with students about the book. This concludes the module. There are a few important things.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize, what to consider when selecting a book. You want to, first of all, be an engaged and excited reader, no matter what book you pick. And you want to select books that are shorter, with language complexity that is age or grade respectful. And so kind of, one of my little soapbox again here is, when I walk into like a middle school classroom and I have a middle schooler and they're like reading a board book to them or like a picture book to them, that is not really age respectful. And so looking at some things that are shorter but are age respectful, that are, that look like things that their peers, at least have content that their peers might be reading. Books with lots of language may result in the student being less engaged. So you want to kind of pick, books that are shorter, or or you're just giving them you're reading part of it, of the page with the most, that gets the most content up through. So what the essential detail is in the picture and the information they're trying to get. You want to pick books the student's interested in. I mean, I like to read things I'm interested in, and things I'm not interested in, I have to kind of plow my way through, and it's really not fun. I'm sure that's the same for everybody. Words that you are modeling can refer to the pictures and not necessarily the text. And you guys definitely got that in the activity we are doing. And when you're reading, you want to point to the pictures and the text so that they start seeing that, oh, this text has meaning. So just think of how you read to your own children. And it's very similar to how I read to mine growing up. And this is Tom Sawyer, and it's in Tar Heel Reader, and it basically tells the Tom Sawyer story in a more simple vocabulary, so they can be getting that same content in there. And, again, I keep putting this in here because I think it's so important, that it's about the interaction. So leaving here today, I want you to know that the shared reading is about the interaction. So we're going to look at a couple of these sites here because I want you to know how to find them. So Tar Heel Reader, that link takes you right to Tar Heel Reader. And so you can go in here and you can search for anything, so if your class, say your class is studying the cycles of the moon, you can type in moon and you'll see the moon stories that come up, but you can also go in here and look at all topics. So if there's something, if you're in preschool and you want to bring up some nursery rhymes, or, fairy tales or folk tales or holidays, there's books about everything. Reviewed only means that Karen Erickson has actually reviewed them, and you'll see she has a star rating system. So some come in and they're not reviewed. Anybody can, if you want to write books with kids, you can work with me and I can help you get an account to where you can do that as well, to where you guys could create books and then go back and read books that you created. One thing to know, just so you know, and you've heard it once, and again, I'll help you later on, you can just email me. If you click on this settings gear and you want it to read aloud to the student, you can click speech and it will read it. The voice is kind of meh, but it does the trick. And then you can change the color. So if you've got a student with like cortical visual impairment who needs like high contrast, you can do that. So that's where you can do that. And I am going to open this book right here, The Moon. It is written by, so the book was written by, it says NKSD, that's North Kitsap School District. So that's where I worked before coming to Edmonds. And I partnered with our Honor Society to go through the elementary curriculum core books and make them, put them into Tar Heel Reader. So let's open this one. And then this, and you can print, these are PowerPoints, and so you can print them and make your own books out of them if you want to have a paper book to read. The Moon. And so think about what you would, you know, what you might want to model on this one. Get your sticky note ready. You know, look, big, like. And so you can see, you know, kind of what that looks like. I'm going to, let's see, let me move this little thing. Okay, Tar Heel Shared Reader is very similar as well. However, I am going to open this one, About 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So again, that would be some content for probably an older student. Now, what you'll notice with the Tar Heel Shared Reader is along the bottom are the core words. So some of them, like up here, if you look at this little comment box right here, if you click on it, you can pick what words you want to say and put in there, or it might give you some ideas. Let's see, now I got to figure out how to close it. Okay, but they'll read it. So, you know, you can scroll here and it goes through. Look. And what I've used with some of my resource kiddos who were at the emergent reading level and really struggled is we'd go through and we'd find the word here, you know, on this. And so say the first grade class was reading, you know, Arbor Day, I'd come in here and find a book about trees. So we're still getting that content and we'd read the book about trees. And then we'd try to find like, you know, a core word about that. So I love this. I love having the core words across the bottom. So, and most of the books are short. They have like 1 or 2 sentences on the page. So that is Tar Heel Shared Reader. So those are the, you know, totally free, totally accessible. They're Switch accessible if you have a Switch user. They're eye gaze accessible if you have an eye gaze user. Epic is another great place. And what I would recommend is that if you're reading the Epic book with a student, especially since we're doing so many things like remotely and digitally right now, is you read a page and you stop, you know, and you kind of pause it and you talk about that page and use those core words to talk about it. There's not going to be a child in the district who is not going to benefit from you modeling that core vocabulary. Learning Ally is another place with some great books. Unite for Literacy has some free books as well, and Storytime Online has some great ones. And just any book from the, you know, look at your books from the what's in the library, what's in the classroom. If you're at home and you have small kids, or, I kept a kind of collection of my favorite ones. And so those are good places to get that information. Okay, so here is the test. We'll see who can get this. What does CAR stand for? If you can put it in the chat here. All right, doesn't stand for that, right? You guys are all passing with flying colors. Comment, ask, respond. Okay. Is there some ways that we could help remember to use the CAR strategy? I mean, for me, it's like just remembering to pause is really the most important thing. And, being kind with each other and kind of, if you have questions or, if, give each other the heads up, hey, I noticed you didn't wait 10 seconds, and just be like kind with each other as you kind of learn this. So we talked a little bit about this. Do we require students to use their symbols? So, the answer to that is no, we don't require them. And, why do you think that's the case? So we want to learn to take the lead by showing them how to make comments about the book, but not requiring them to show us. You want to let them talk for themselves. Perfect. All right. And then here's a link to some weekly academic literacy routines. So if you wanted to kind of look at your book and do some planning, you could say, okay, the first read, these are the words, and you could type in there the theme and kind of what you're going to model. So a way to kind of help you plan that. So the link to that is there, kind of prompts you to think about the book differently. My mouse and I are not being friends today. Okay, and then there's a self-reflection and observation form. And this is a great tool to help you reflect on what you're doing, what you need to work on for your own professional growth. It's intended to help us remember to interact and not like a punitive kind of thing. You can ask a peer, if you have someone joining your Zoom group, could you just, look at this and let me know how I did? And you can set goals for your classrooms for areas to work on. So it's really just a tool to kind of, and you can try it for yourself. It's a good reminder for yourself, as you're reading. And it basically goes through, I think this is a big one. All students have access to their personal communication system with core vocabulary. That's something I'm always like, oh, crud, I got to get everybody their core board or, their AAC. So it's just a good way to kind of look at, oh yeah, I did that, or oh shoot, I forgot to do that, because this is learning a new skill, and that really helps with that. So if you have time, give it a try this week. If you were in my last session, you're going to see my favorite quote here again. Let us never mix up performance with intelligence. Some of the most brilliant kids have yet to be set free simply because the adults in their world have yet to learn how to serve them and pull out their best potential. Let's not get stuck in the performance trap. Our job is to believe in every child. Every child needs and deserves that champion. You guys are that champion. None of this is possible without you, because you're the ones who work most closely and most directly with these students. So